Okay, let's dive in. We're exploring 2 Kings chapter 14 today. This one covers quite a bit of ground, bouncing between kings in Judah and Israel. It's a real mix of, decisions, battles, surprising arrogance, and even a prophet showing up.
It really is. What's interesting is how much history gets packed into just one chapter.
Yeah.
You get these glimpses into different reigns, personal choices clashing with, well, bigger historical stuff happening between the kingdoms. And the details, they really paint a picture. So our plan is to sort of unpack the key moments, look at what these kings did, and maybe see what insights pop out about leadership, pride, consequences, that sort of thing, straight from the text.
Sounds good. So it kicks off with King Amaziah in Judah, son of Joash. Becomes king pretty young, well, 25, and he rules for 29 years down in Jerusalem. The text even names his mother, Jehoadan, also from Jerusalem.
Yeah, and right away, we get that classic summary judgment on his rule. It says he did what was right in the eyes of the Lord. Which sounds good, right? But then there's that big but, not as his father David had done. It specifically says he was more like his own father, Joash.
Ah, okay. So Joash wasn't exactly the gold standard either, was he? So Amaziah is trying, maybe, but not quite hitting that Davidic ideal, and we see an example immediately.
Exactly. The text points out the high places, however, were not removed. People kept sacrificing there, burning incense. These were, local worship sites, often mixing traditions, not the central temple worship God had prescribed. Their presence is a signal.
A signal that maybe the reforms weren't complete, or maybe couldn't be?
Something like that. It suggests that even if the king had good intentions, there were still these underlying issues in popular religious practice that weren't fully dealt with.
Okay. So after he gets his feet under him, consolidates power, Amaziah deals with the guys who killed his father, King Joash. The text says he executed them. Seems pretty straightforward justice.
But here's where it gets really specific, and the text emphasizes it. It says he did not execute the sons of the assassins, and it tells us exactly why.
Right. It quotes the law of Moses directly here, doesn't it?
It does. It includes the command, fathers shall not be put to death for their children, or children put to death for their fathers. Each is to die for his own sins. So the narrative makes a point of showing Amaziah, in this specific case, following a direct divine instruction about individual responsibility. He didn't follow the common practice of wiping out the whole family.
That's actually a pretty big deal, showing that principle in action. So, okay, he's doing some things right by the book, securing his throne, and then he scores a major military win.
Yeah, against Edom. He defeats 10,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. That's a significant victory. And he captures their key city, Selah, and even renames it Joktiel.
10,000 defeated. And renaming a city, Selah becomes Joktiel. He must have been feeling pretty good about himself after that.
You'd think so. Immense confidence, probably. And it's precisely after this big success against Edom that things take a sharp turn. Riding high on that victory, Amaziah does something. Well, bold, maybe rash. He sends a message to Jehoash, the king of Israel up north.
Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, son of Jehu. Okay.
Right.
And the message.
The message is basically a challenge. Come, let's meet face to face. Let's fight.
Wait, seriously. After beating Edom, he immediately picks a fight with Israel. Why on earth would he do that?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The text doesn't spell out his motives, but the timing, right after a major victory, it screams overconfidence. Hubris, maybe?
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder, was it just pure pride clouding his judgment?
Well, Jehoash's reply certainly suggests he thought it was arrogance. And his response is amazing. He uses a parable.
Oh, it's brilliant. A real put-down, but poetic. Jehoash says, essentially, a thistle in Lebanon asked a cedar in Lebanon to marry his daughter to his son. But then a wild beast came by and trampled the thistle.
Ouch. Wow. A thistle wanting to marry into the cedar family, then getting squashed. That's blunt, like a dismissal wrapped in an insult.
And Jehoash doesn't leave it there. He spells it out for Amaziah. He says, basically, look, you beat Edom, great. Now you're arrogant. Enjoy your victory, but stay home. Why provoke disaster for yourself and for Judah? He's telling him point blank, this is reckless pride and it's going to end badly.
Crystal clear warning, stay home, don't ask for trouble, but knowing how these stories often go.
Yeah. The text says Amaziah would not listen. Ignore the parable, ignore the direct advice.
So the showdown happens.
It does. They meet at Beth Shemesh, which is actually in Judah's territory.
Yeah.
And the result, it's quick, it's decisive. Judah was routed by Israel, every man fled home. And King Amaziah himself, captured by Jehoash right there on the battlefield.
Just like Jehoash predicted, the pride led straight to the fall. And the consequences. They didn't stop there, did they?
Not even close. Jehoash takes the captured Amaziah and marches on Jerusalem. And what he does there isn't just about loot, it's about humiliation. The text gives this really specific detail. He broke down the wall of Jerusalem from the Ephraim gate to the corner gate, a section about 600 feet long.
600 feet, that's massive. Like you said, longer than 2 football fields, just tearing down a huge chunk of their capital's defenses.
It's a physical scar, a symbol of total domination. It says your security is gone. And then, of course, he takes the valuables, all the gold, silver, articles from the temple, from the royal palace treasuries, stripped clean.
Temple and palace treasuries emptied, defenses breached. Anything else?
Oh, yeah. He took hostages back to Samaria, too. So it's a complete disaster for Judah. Military defeat, national humiliation, economic ruin, physical damage to the capital, key people taken away. And the narrative presents it all flowing directly from Amaziah's arrogant challenge to Israel after his Edomite win.
Wow. Okay, so the chapter then notes Jehoash's death, Jeroboam, his son, takes over in Israel. And it adds this interesting bit. Amaziah actually lived for 15 years after Jehoash died.
Right, so his end wasn't immediate defeat in battle or captivity, but it was still violent, and it came from his own people. They conspired against him in Jerusalem, it says. He tried to escape, fled to Lachish, but they sent assassins after him and killed him there.
So after leading Judah into that disaster, his own reign ends not against a foreign enemy, but by internal plot, far from the capital. They bring his body back on a horse, bury him in Jerusalem. A pretty turbulent end.
Definitely. And then the people of Judah make his son Azariah king. He was only 16. And the text notes Azariah later rebuilt Elath, showing maybe the beginning of Judah's recovery.
Okay, so now the focus shifts north to Jeroboam II, Jehoash's son, king of Israel. He starts reigning in the 15th year of Amaziah down in Judah, and he reigns for a really long time.
41 years. That's huge, especially for the northern kingdom. But right away, despite the long reign, we get that same kind of upfront moral judgment. He did evil in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn away from any of the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat. That links into the original sin of the northern kingdom, the calf worship.
So clearly labeled as doing evil, following the worst traditions according to this source, yet the very next thing the text talks about are his major successes.
Exactly. This is where it gets really complex and, frankly, fascinating. Despite the evil label, Jeroboam II oversees this massive restoration of Israel's territory. From Lebo-Hath, way up north, down to the Sea of the Arabah, the Dead Sea. It was a period of, national resurgence for Israel.
A king doing evil but achieving great things for the nation. How does the text explain that?
Well, it says this restoration happened in accordance with the word of the Lord, the God of Israel. It frames it as divinely ordained. And it gets even more specific. It says this word came through his servant Jonah, son of Amittai, the prophet from Gath-Hepher. Yes, that Jonah, the one with the big fish. So the text is saying this major historical success under an evil king was actually the fulfillment of a prophecy from Jonah.
Hold on. That's quite a statement. An evil king is the instrument for fulfilling God's word, spoken through a major prophet like Jonah. How does that work? It seems like a contradiction.
It forces you to think differently, doesn't it? The text gives us the Lord's motivation here. It says God had seen how bitterly everyone in Israel was suffering. There was no one to help them. Basically, the people were in deep trouble, desperate.
Ah, so God's action was driven by the people's suffering.
That's how the text presents it. And it adds that because God had not said he would blot out the name of Israel, he used Jeroboam II to save them. He saved them by the hand of Jeroboam, son of Jehoash. So the narrative suggests God used this king, despite his personal wickedness, as the tool to bring relief and preserve Israel, fulfilling Jonah's prophecy along the way.
That's a lot to process. Divine purpose working through someone the text itself judges harshly. It's a really complex view of history and divine action presented here. The chapter then wraps up Jeroboam II's story quickly. Other acts in the annals. He dies. His son Zechariah takes over.
So you end the chapter with these two starkly contrasting stories side by side. Amaziah starts okay, follows a specific law, wins a battle, gets arrogant, leads his nation to disaster, ends assassinated by his own people.
Versus Jeroboam II, judged as doing evil from the start, reigns for a long time, oversees a massive national restoration that the text explicitly attributes to God's intervention through him, fulfilling prophecy because God saw the people suffering.
It's packed with these memorable details, too. That quote from Moses about individual responsibility, the thistle and cedar parable, just cutting, the specific length of the broken wall. and then dropping Jonah's name in there.
Definitely memorable. So as you listen, what does this prompt you to think about? About leadership. How success can breed that dangerous arrogance we saw in Amaziah.
Yeah. And what about justice and consequences?
Oh, yeah.
And maybe most profoundly, how do you wrestle with this idea presented in the text of a ruler doing evil but being the means of significant national good attributed to divine action? What does that suggest about how this source sees the difference between, say, personal morality and a larger, perhaps redemptive purpose unfolding in history?
Flawed leaders, big swings between success and failure, and this underlying narrative of a bigger plan.
It really sets up this contrast. One king's pride leads to ruin. Another king's wickedness doesn't stop him from being, according to the text, the instrument of national salvation.
Definitely a lot to chew on there, isn't it? This look at 2 Kings 14 challenges you to think beyond simple good guy, bad guy labels and consider the really complex ways human choices, consequences, and, as the text sees it, divine will can interact, something to keep mulling over.